I've got a very special guest with me. I met him in Nashville. He was wearing boots when I met him. This is Drew Littlejohns. Welcome to the podcast, my buddy.
Oh man, it is so great to be here.
Oh,
I believe that I'm still
yeah,
wearing
yeah.
boots.
Hasn't
Anyways,
changed,
yeah,
folks. He's still wearing the boots.
I mean, they're getting a little crusty. My socks probably need to be washed, but they're
Yeah,
lucky socks. So, man, I'm
yeah.
stoked
Well,
to be here.
I'm glad
All
it's
right, what are we
digital
talking
because I
about
don't want
today?
to be around your crusty socks, you know?
Oh yeah.
No, I'm
Are you
not.
sure about that? They're
All right.
lucky.
So uh, I'd like to start off with, and by the way, for those of you listening, thanks, Mom, for being my subscriber. Um, Drew and I are cut from the same cloth. So I'm going to do my best to not let him let me go off track. And we're going to see how that goes.
Do you, buddy? Yeah, should I introduce myself as to who I am and what I do, or do you want to introduce me? Did I give you
Well,
a thing?
considering that it's my podcast and I know how to do it, how about you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank God. No. You're killing me. No, my name is Drew Littlejohns. I am I'm a fractional brand manager for Amazon. I wrote a book for funsies called The Purple Squirrel Paradox. You really can't get it anywhere other than by messaging me on LinkedIn and asking for a copy because just is what it is. But essentially, I do fractional brand management. So mostly
Mhm.
with D2C brands. I recently took a brand from about 500K in annual revenue to tracking for 28 million this year right now in annual revenue. So I took that system that we had built there, and then I actually wrote that book based on the system that we built. Predominantly in a D2C environment, in a scaling D2C environment, but finding that it ports pretty well, as long as you're navigating the omni-channel thing. So I work a lot with that. And then launching a fresh brand pretty soon here. Going to do a nootropic K-cup coffee thing probably. And then I also own a nutritional supplement manufacturing company that has a brand called VH Nutrition. Been selling on Amazon for 14 years. So just kind of been doing this for a really,
Yeah.
really long.
Now, like you, I've been selling on Amazon since 2010. So at this point, that's 16 years now. I went a different route, right? And the interesting thing is I've been selling supplements the entire time, and we still sell supplements. Um, and in fact, there's even a conversation possibility for us to talk about you manufacturing a supplement that my wife wants to do. But um, I went into the SaaS and software and service side. I mean, no question about it. You can still make money on Amazon. Absolutely, still one of the best places in the world to launch a product. But I find that these days my margin is better on software, obviously, than product based, and my aggravation is significantly less. But I have a very strong passion for helping sellers. And, with all the things that have changed, like you and I, we've been there through the evolution of all these changes. And so there are things that a new Amazon seller or even a multi-year tenured Amazon seller wouldn't know to do or not to do that people like us can shortcut straight to the point and help somebody bypass the loss of significant amounts of time and or money.
True.
Well, I've got 5 questions I want to ask you here. So I'm going to start off with the first one, uh, as opposed to the fifth one.
Okay. I heard that the beginning is a really good place to start. That's what Mary
No, she
Poppins
said
said. So let's do it.
supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Don't ask me how I know.
You're right. It was still Julia Robin, but it was Sound of Music. That's where
Cool.
it was. Go for it.
Spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down for sure. All right. So here's question number 1. What are the main challenges of scaling on Amazon?
The main challenges of scaling on Amazon. So let's say you get to a #1 ranking across the board for everything. You don't have any way to increase demand for your brand name. So the problem is that Amazon is not infinitely scalable. Like you can't just attach a dial to Amazon and then just kind of keep scaling it forever. So if you want to scale heavily on Amazon, it requires a pretty robust omni-channel presence or at least an omni-channel strategy to drive halo effect. So scaling on Amazon, unless you're going to be launching, lots of new SKUs with a regular basis. If you have a big email list, if you have a rabid fan base, you can actually scale, but it would be scaling through product launches rather than scaling by winning
Yep.
for more
Yep.
keywords, if that makes sense. But the best way to predictably scale is to have Amazon as that catch-all, bottom of funnel branded search conversion, that kind of thing, or have it as a good validator for whatever you're saying off Amazon. If you're like, we have the best skin cream ever, and then they go to Amazon and it's like a 2.7 star rating, like, induced eczema, you're like, oh man, that people are they're gonna have a tough
Yeah,
time with
definitely.
that one, right? 1 star would not recommend, buyer beware. You got to watch out for that kind of stuff. So making sure that your Amazon listings are uh, saying the same things you're saying off Amazon. Those are kind of the big
Yeah.
scalers. Yeah,
All
for
right.
sure.
And then something you said made me think of something sometime at some point. But I forgot that choo-choo train of thought is gone. So I'm just going to move on to the next thing. Uh, in our industry, Shopify is generally the way to go. Now, when I was doing ecom on a website, it was kind of pre-Shopify. I was using WooCommerce, so that is an infinitely more complicated system to use for ecom. But that's what I was building out. I actually built a full-blown custom website for baby carriers. Gosh, man, whoa, that must have been nearly 2 decades ago. But would you say that Shopify is the best place to start if you wanna, get a brand going?
I still think so. I mean, I have not seen anything beyond it that
You don't like
compares.
Wix?
Ease of use. I mean, I don't love Wix. I don't love Squarespace. All the AI, website builders, they're not very good. I mean, here's the thing. If you want to do a super scammy subscription based model, you may have to attach a few like weird modules to your Shopify because Shopify actually maintains pretty legit standing. So I like that because I think Shopify actually has like some really good. I think their modules are perfect. I think the development community is really good. Just everything about Shopify, you can get to wherever it is that you want to go. That doesn't mean that once you hit, $50 million of revenue, you're going to have to do a custom build out at some
Yeah,
point. But Shopify is fantastic. For anything under $15 million of
cool.
revenue, Shopify is great.
Okay. So, next question is this: what are the top 3 mistakes that sellers make when they're scaling?
The number one mistake is not paying attention to the fact that you have a brand. You have a brand. It should have a personality. Should have a name. It should function. People should know your brand when they see your brand versus other brands. I think the biggest mistake that Amazon companies make is that they just refuse to brand. And the reason that it's hard is because the day you want to pivot off of
Yeah,
Amazon,
well,
you
I
don't
mean,
know
that's
how.
what I ran into, you know, because I built a
Yes.
Shopify site for
I mean,
my
it's,
camping blankets, and at
uh,
that time, I was like, "Let the sales roll in." Hello? Anybody?
now, I remember that there was this, speaking of camping, there was a hammock brand a while back. It was like
Oh,
Bare Butt Hammocks or
I
something like this. Do you remember
I don't
these
remember
guys? Did
Bear
you ever
Butt,
see
but
any of their?
I know a few brands.
Okay, Bare Butt Hammocks, something like that. They murdered on Amazon, millions and millions of dollars a year, just absolutely crushing. And they had the exact
Yeah,
same product as everyone else. And the only difference was that they had a good brand that was recognizable, it was enjoyable, it was funny, and everyone else just
right.
had backpacking hammocks. And I know for me personally, in my own supplement brand, of course, when I started mine, I had just read the 4 Hour Work Week. It was like 2011, right? I was ranking number one in Google for
Yeah,
like weird phrases and making supplements. I mean, we were making them in my garage with we were tamping down pills and putting the pills by hand. Like we're literally
wow.
making them by hand, right? Hitting them with a hair dryer to blow the dust off. I mean, that's how sketchy it
Yeah,
was in 2011. Right. But we didn't when we went to build it out, we did not build it out
mhm.
with the brand in mind. They were all individual products that had a good product name, but back then, like, we weren't doing IP, we weren't doing trademarking, we weren't doing any of that stuff. So, for example, I've got a new supplement that we really want to launch, and the first thing we did was, okay, we went and got a name. We got the name trademarked in our class, in the class
Yep.
005 for supplements. And now we're actually ready to go because one of the problems that I ran into was an IP. This is number two. This is IP, which is Walmart had asked us to get into to sell an
Okay.
herbal menopause supplement. We were doing about 3 million a year on Amazon with it, and we did not have the trademark, and and no matter how many times we tried, we had some amazing patent attorneys,
Uh,
we could not get it. And so I lost maybe what, $3 million a year
Potential revenue.
in 5 years. I lost maybe $15
Yeah.
million of potential
Yeah.
revenue because I didn't have an IP. Having your brand, having a brand that's known, that's recognizable, having your IP that is protected. And these are all things that you just do in the very beginning, right? And then the next thing is I'd say to probably lock down your growth strategy for how you're going to increase AOV and your lifetime value of a customer, and like really nail down like your personas, your pain points, and like how you're going to grow your business so that it's not just a
Yep.
one-time sale on Amazon and then you
Yep.
never talk to that person again. I know we've done like $75 million on Amazon, and our email list is maybe
Wow.
36,000. And of course, it's because it's mostly Amazon driven. However, we did not take into account all of those factors when we initially started that brand. So if I'm starting a brand new brand today, I mean, I'm starting with brand voice, my persona, I'm starting with the IP, I'm starting with how are we going to drive these people up in their ascension to increase lifetime value, or just what am I going to do from a bundling perspective for AOV to make TikTok Shop profitable, because it's not profitable unless you bundle. There's all those kind of questions that you really have to cover up, like,
Makes
right out of
sense.
the gate.
And by the way, for those that are listening, if you're newer to e-commerce or commerce in general, AOV stands for average order value. Basically, what he's saying is that if you're selling this cup right here, well, you don't want this customer to only buy that cup from you and then never come back. You want to also bundle the shot glasses and the flask and the lemonade thing and when you get the customer's email, you can say, "Hey, by the way, did you know about our lemonade thing? Summer's coming up. Crush the lemons, pour in the sugar, and use our cup to do it."
And ideally, they would subscribe to the
Right.
coffee that goes into there, so now their $20 cup becomes a
Absolutely.
$15 a month subscription
Yep.
to my coffee brand. I mean, that's
Yeah. So let's see here. Thank you. That's actually really good advice on three mistakes that sellers make. I also made the same mistake where I have gone and just randomly decided, "Oh, I'm gonna." You know what? It was my blankets. Now that I think about it, so I named the brand Down for Adventure, right? So I wanted something that I was doing down camping blankets, but I wanted a name that also encompassed adventure in general, right? And so I went,
Mhm.
at the time, this is a decade ago, yeah, I'm down for adventure. And so you say, yeah, I'm down. People still say it today, but for you younger folks out there, in case you didn't know what that means, uh, so I named it Down for Adventure. Well, I got my samples made. I got an order of several hundred blankets, and went, oh man, I should buy the domain. And guess what? The domain's not available. So I don't own downforadventure.com. So I had to buy
Brutal.
.co, but nobody goes to .co. So I
No, they don't.
really screwed myself on that. And I found myself saying, yeah, just go to downforadventure.com. I mean .co. So having this stuff
Yeah.
all this stuff done and research on the upfront, take it from, like Drew's saying it, he's an expert in the space, but take it from my personal experience of screwing that up. Make sure you can get the Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, web domain, all the
Yep.
handles that you need. And then, of course, arguably even more important, can you trademark it? Right? my company, my overall company is called Danan Enterprises Incorporated, right? It houses all of my brands underneath it. And I went to that's what I sell under on Amazon. So I went to, you know, 16 years ago, Amazon didn't even require that you have a picture to sell on Amazon. FBA didn't exist, and PPC was being piloted. So I didn't need a trademark, and so when I went to get my trademark, I had it took me 13 months. I did it myself, which I also would never do again, but it took me 13 months to get my trademark because of all the back and forth,
Mm,
because it's Danon, which is a surname, Enterprises, which you can't trademark, and Incorporated, which you also can't trademark. So you can't trademark
mm,
Danon because it's a surname, and you can't trademark the other two because they're just too general. So I had to prove to the USPTO that I'd been operating under this name for more than 5 years, and it just took forever. So I eventually got the trademark. Today, before I ever started selling on Amazon under Danon Enterprises, I'd see if I could easily get that trademarked. Is it already out there? You know? So that's just a significant for me, that was a significant cost and time. Unbelievable amounts of hours spent watching the USPTO's actually quite good explanation videos, but tons of them. Okay, you're burning up all my
yeah,
time by listening to me talk, Drew, so I'm gonna go on to the next question.
and we can do whatever you want, man. I'm enjoying the
Thanks,
sound of
me
your
too,
voice.
obviously. So, how do you vet
Obvious.
agencies, freelancers, and future in-house hires? Like, what's the process you go through to make sure people know what they're doing?
Wow, we're just gonna jump right into that one. How do you vet people? Well, the first thing to understand is like when you're going to vet somebody, it's vet them like to what, right? If you're just like, my PPC totally sucks, I need to bring in somebody to do it. Like, why does your PPC suck? What is it about it that's not working? Why would so some agencies are really good with direct to consumer, some are really good with helping for like categorical relevance and ranking, blah blah blah. So how do you vet them? I usually start with do they first of all, is this something that I can bring in-house? Meaning I actually know how to manage it. So first of all, is this a skill set that I have but just suck at? Or like I'm not being consistent, right? And if your PPC is bad and you don't actually know why it's bad, that's probably a good sign to go freelance or go agency or whatever. So as soon as you talk to the agency, then the next thing is do you go by spend? Like they spend more money and therefore you have to pay them more money? Like are they operating
I
under an
really dislike that
antiquated
model.
agency
I
fee
dislike that
model?
model so much.
Oh, it's ridiculous. In the age of AI, like I'm not paying you an extra $7,000 because you decided to click two buttons that I told you to click. So, because remember, the reason that that model exists is because back in the day, on Madison Avenue, those guys had all of the advertising relationships, and you couldn't just get the relationships. So, if you wanted to spend 20% more, that meant 20% more relationships. They also did
Yeah,
100% of the creative, right? So it's like they were doing all and they had all of the psychological testing that was coming in. So they actually knew what was happening from a psychology perspective that we didn't have access to. So they had the relationships, they had the talent, and they had the psychology. When we bring on an agency, we're not expecting them to do creative. We're not expecting them to have all these relationships, and we're not expecting them to like know the psychology and the buyer intent of our brand for our consumer. So an agency just doesn't bring any of the
yeah.
value that they used to bring in terms of like back in the Mad Men advertising agency days. So I look for that. Also, do they care about me making money? Do they ask about COGS, contribution margin? Do they understand like that just because they sold a lot of goods doesn't mean that
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
making a lot of
yeah.
money? Like, do they care? Those are all major
I
things.
was
And
just gonna
then
say, do you remember the
go ahead.
days when someone said, "I'm a seven-figure seller?" You're like, "Oh, a unicorn."
I I remember the day that I met a guy one time. He was going to try to sell
Okay.
me on joining his mastermind. And he meets me in a Zoom setting like this. and he's like, I'm gonna call him Matt or whatever. He's like, "Hi, I'm Matt, nine-figure seller." And then like the guy, like it turns out that he was friends with a guy who knew him who had sold nine figures once upon a time, and it wasn't true at all. And oh God, I can't even get on
Yeah.
board with those
It
kind of like
it was
announcements.
I was embarrassed in the days when seven-figure sellers were popping up all over the place. I was embarrassed to say that I was a six-figure seller. But after, getting close with a few people that were seven-figure sellers, turns out I made way more money than them because their profit margins were 10 to 15% and mine was 60. All right.
Exactly. So the next
Yeah.
thing an agency needs to look at is search query performance reports, and that's from branded perspective. If you're branded and your brand impression share is like languishing in the 22%, your brand order share is at like 48%, and your click share is like 37%, that is an instant dead giveaway that your
Mm,
agency sucks. So when I look at the overall landscape of how to vet these guys, you're vetting, you know, is a freelancer going to build a system and then hand it off to you, as in they're designing the system for you to be able to fire them in a year? That's how you know a good freelancer is that they're building systems. You know a good agency because they are maintaining uh, a constant eye on your profit so that they're not torching your brand and then costing you a ton of money, right? And an in-house guy is going to be very consistent. They're going to follow rules. They're going to be SOP people. And if you get a good SOP guy, you get a guy that likes to build systems, you get a company that's going to watch out for your profit margin, you're going to have a lot of good eyes on your team that are going to be really successful. So that's how I
cool.
do
And,
my vetting.
um, what would you expect to pay somebody with these skills? What should a brand expect to pay?
If you're okay, let's say you're doing 20. So
Yeah.
this is a big, broad spectrum, but if you're doing $20
Yeah.
million of D2C and you want to move on to Amazon, okay, you're gonna be right in that, like, five to
Uh-huh.
$10,000 a month. Probably 5 grand for the first 6 months, and then as you scale on Amazon, you're gonna move into that ten to
Okay.
$15,000 a month range. And that's just because, like, you're now as the scale of D2C happens and as the Amazon store gets built out, it's gonna be pretty expensive. But you need to have an actual professional at the helm if you know that you're about to scale to $5 million in under 12 months on Amazon. Like, you need somebody who knows what they're doing, who can manage, one day of your products going down because you don't have your
Yeah.
medical 510K or whatever it is. Like, you're losing hundreds of thousands of dollars instantly. So from an agency perspective, I'm a big fan
Yep.
of flat rate and then, paying for additional services or paying for more like time. I want your COO. I want you to pay $2,500 a month. That's the flat rate. And then you can scale it up from tiers, and then maybe $500 an hour for their COO. That you can meet with them once a week if you really need to. From an in-house guy, if you're just gonna be doing like catalog and everything else, depending on the scope, customer service side. Um, in my perfect world, you have two VAs. You have a VA for forecasting and stock ordering. You have a VA for customer service. The two are kind of separate. Then you have your guy over Amazon. The graphics team would be doing catalog, and then your PPC agency sits kind of outside of that and any other freelancing stuff. But that's kind of what a
Cool.
healthy Amazon department.
Well, we're about out of time here. So, I guess just one last thing. If someone wants to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Man, I'm a basic dude.
Oh,
Just go to
phone
LinkedIn.
call?
Drew
Send you a
Littlejohns.
fax?
Phone call. Yeah, send me a fax. You can write me a letter. Um, yeah, certified. No, find me on LinkedIn. And if you want me to come in and take a look at your business, kind of how it's going, what could or couldn't be done easier, if you want to try to figure out, like, is there a good fit for me to work with you guys? Happy to. All you D2C guys who want to go to Amazon and are scared, you don't understand how it works, that's what I really specialize in. So, man, thanks so much for
Yeah,
having
yeah.
me on
Well,
your
thanks
podcast.
for,
This is a lot of fun.
buying, the slot. Just kidding. He didn't pay for this.
Yeah. Man, I tell you what, it's the best $10,000 I have spent this year
Yeah. Well,
for
it's the
sure.
worst I've accepted, so thank you for that. All right.
Well,
Thanks for
fair
listening,
enough.
everybody.
All right.
We'll probably have Drew on again to maybe do a deep dive into things. Just as a little heads up, I'm likely to start a second series on this channel that are deep dives into people's businesses, not necessarily sellers, but service providers and softwares, and maybe even sellers on how, like, what their SOPs are. That actually is a good idea. So to that degree, we might actually have Drew back on to go, and we will build an SOP on the call, on the episode. So anyhow, look forward for that.
That'd be fun.
And Drew just found out about this, but he's definitely in.
I'm in. We are gonna have I'm happy to be your sidekick, bro. Like, where's my Robin mask?
Yep.
I'm in. I just need a
That's
yellow cape.
we'll skip that. Thanks for listening, everybody. I'll see you in the next episode.